There are people who open doors in their lives without even realizing it. They speak certain words, entertain certain habits, and welcome certain influences that invite darkness into their homes, minds, and families. Tonight, you are about to hear a shocking confession from someone who once walked deep inside the world of witchcraft and spiritual manipulation. This is not fiction, and this is not entertainment. These are hidden truths about the everyday actions that give evil forces permission to operate against people who never knew they were vulnerable. By the end of this message, you will recognize the dangerous patterns that silently give witches legal rights to attack, oppress, and destroy. And you will learn how to close every door before it is too late. Most people never imagine that the greatest battles in their lives may begin with the words coming out of their own mouths. They wake up every morning speaking defeat over their future, calling themselves worthless, broken, unlucky, and forgotten. They repeat negative confessions so often that darkness no longer needs permission from outside forces, because permission is already being spoken daily from within. An ex which once confessed that many spiritual attacks become possible because people continually release destructive words over their homes, health, marriages, and destiny. What shocks many people is that witches pay attention to the atmosphere created by human speech, because words carry spiritual authority whether people believe it or not. Every time a person constantly declares fear, hopelessness, bitterness, and failure, they unknowingly build a doorway that invites oppression to grow stronger around them. There are people who spend years saying nothing good about themselves, and then wonder why peace disappears from their lives. They constantly say that nothing ever works for them, that they will probably fail, that they can never escape suffering, and that disaster always follows them. Over time, those words begin to shape their thinking, their choices, and the spiritual atmosphere surrounding them. The ex-witch explained that darkness is attracted to agreement, and when people continually agree with despair, they strengthen chains that were never meant to remain in their lives. Many attacks do not begin with rituals performed in secret places, because some attacks begin in ordinary conversations, spoken carelessly every single day. The enemy understands that if a person can be controlled through fear-filled speech, their confidence, purpose, and spiritual strength can slowly be destroyed without resistance. This is why you must become careful with what leaves your mouth, even during moments of frustration and pain. There are people who curse their own children in anger, destroy their marriages with toxic speech, and fill their homes with constant negativity without realizing the damage being created. Words have the ability to build or destroy, to heal or wound, to release hope or deepen darkness. The confession revealed that witches often look for people whose speech already reflects confusion and defeat, because those people become easier to influence spiritually. A person who continually speaks life, faith, strength, and truth becomes far more difficult to oppress because their atmosphere no longer agrees with darkness. Your words can either strengthen the walls protecting your future, or slowly tear those walls down piece by piece. Tonight, you must make a decision to change the language of your life before it changes your destiny. Stop speaking death over situations that still have the power to recover, and stop agreeing with hopelessness when God has already declared purpose over your future. Even in difficult seasons, you must learn to speak with courage, wisdom, and faith, because your voice carries more power than you realize. The enemy wants you trapped in cycles of negativity, because defeated speech creates defeated thinking and defeated living. But the moment you begin declaring peace instead of fear, strength instead of weakness, and hope instead of despair, the atmosphere around your life begins to shift. Guard your words carefully, because what you continually speak today may determine the spiritual battles you face tomorrow. One of the greatest deceptions in this generation is the belief that hidden sin carries no spiritual consequence. People have been taught that they can entertain darkness privately while expecting peace publicly. But spiritual laws do not disappear simply because society chooses to ignore them. The which confessed that many attacks become possible because people willingly open doors through choices they refuse to confront. Bitterness, unforgiveness, addiction, lust, jealousy, occult practices, and rebellion against truth create access points that darkness uses to gain influence over a person's life. What begins as a small compromise can slowly become a chain that controls thoughts, emotions, relationships, and spiritual clarity. Many people are not suffering because they are weak, but because they continue protecting habits that silently destroy their spiritual defenses. There are individuals who carry deep anger for years, while pretending everything is normal on the outside. They smile in public but privately feed resentment, hatred, and revenge until those emotions poison their peace and distort their judgment. The confession revealed that unforgiveness is one of the most dangerous doors because it gives darkness a place to remain active inside the heart. Some people spend years praying for breakthrough while still holding bitterness that blocks healing and freedom from entering their lives. Others become trapped in addictions that slowly consume their minds and weaken their ability to resist spiritual oppression. The enemy does not always attack suddenly, because many times destruction enters slowly through repeated compromise that people choose to excuse rather than confront. The which also revealed that many people unknowingly invite darkness through curiosity about occult practices disguised as entertainment. Some participate in rituals, fortune-telling, spiritual games, or practices that appear harmless but carry spiritual consequences far deeper than they understand. Others surround themselves with influences that glorify evil, celebrate rebellion, and normalize spiritual corruption until their sensitivity to truth becomes weakened. Darkness does not need full control immediately, because all it needs is consistent access to gradually shape thoughts, desires, and decisions over time. This is why some people suddenly find themselves overwhelmed with fear, confusion, torment, and emotional heaviness they cannot explain. They opened doors through repeated compromise and never realized that every hidden choice was building a pathway for spiritual oppression to enter. But tonight there is still an opportunity to close every door that should never have been opened. Freedom begins when a person becomes honest about the areas of life that have been feeding darkness instead of feeding truth. You cannot protect what you refuse to confront, and you cannot overcome what you continue to justify in secret. The moment you choose repentance, forgiveness, purity, and spiritual discipline, you begin tearing down the legal rights that darkness once used against you. The enemy loses power when a person stops cooperating with destructive habits and starts walking in truth with boldness and conviction. What you allow in private today will shape the spiritual condition of your life tomorrow, so guard your heart carefully. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing they can survive spiritual battles while remaining spiritually careless. Many wake up every day completely unguarded, never praying, never seeking discernment, and never paying attention to the influences shaping their minds and hearts. The X which confessed that spiritually weak and distracted people are often the easiest targets because they do not recognize attacks until serious damage has already been done. Darkness looks for individuals who have become comfortable living without spiritual discipline, because those lives slowly become vulnerable to fear, confusion, temptation, and oppression. Many people spend years trying to fix external problems without realizing the real battle is taking place within their spiritual condition. A person without spiritual protection becomes like a house with unlocked doors, exposed to anything that desires to enter. There are people who only turn toward God during moments of crisis while ignoring Him during seasons of comfort and success. They neglect prayer, avoid spiritual growth, and surround themselves with toxic voices that weaken their faith and distort their thinking. Over time, their spiritual sensitivity becomes dull, and they lose the ability to recognize danger before it reaches their lives. The confession revealed that witches often study patterns of weakness because spiritual carelessness creates opportunities for attacks to grow stronger unnoticed. Some people become consumed by entertainment, distractions, and unhealthy relationships until their minds are constantly filled with noise but completely empty of truth. When spiritual discipline disappears, fear becomes louder, temptation becomes stronger, and confusion begins controlling decisions that once seemed clear. This is why spiritual alertness is not optional for anyone who wants to walk in peace and protection. You must become intentional about guarding your heart, your thoughts, your relationships, and the atmosphere surrounding your life. Prayer is not merely a religious routine, because it is spiritual protection that strengthens your mind and keeps your spirit connected to truth. Discernment becomes essential because not every influence, opportunity, or relationship entering your life carries good intentions. The X which confessed that spiritually strong people become difficult targets because their lives are rooted in prayer, wisdom, truth, and obedience to God. Darkness struggles to gain influence where faith remains active, where truth is spoken boldly, and where spiritual discipline is consistently maintained. Tonight, you must decide whether you will continue living spiritually exposed, or whether you will begin strengthening your spiritual foundation with seriousness and conviction. Stop allowing distractions to weaken your focus, and stop surrounding yourself with influences that pull you away from truth and peace. Build habits that strengthen your spirit daily, because battles are easier to overcome when preparation already exists before the attack arrives. A spiritually alert person recognizes danger early, resists temptation quickly, and stands firm even during difficult seasons of pressure and uncertainty. The enemy hopes you remain distracted, careless, and disconnected because unguarded lives are easier to influence and destroy. Protect your spirit faithfully, because your spiritual condition will determine how well you withstand the battles ahead. Tonight you have heard the dangerous truths that many people ignore until their lives are already filled with confusion, fear, brokenness, and spiritual oppression. The words you speak, the hidden compromises you protect, and the lack of spiritual discipline you tolerate can open doors that were never meant to be opened. The confession of an X, which reveals that darkness looks for agreement, weakness, and carelessness, because these become legal rights for attacks to operate freely. But you are not powerless, and you are not destined to remain trapped in cycles of defeat. Every door that was opened can be closed through truth, repentance, prayer, and spiritual awareness. From this moment forward, guard your words carefully, protect your heart faithfully, and remain spiritually alert, because your future may depend on the choices you make after hearing this message. Tonight,